This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.
All right, could professional hockey be making its return to Mullet Arena? It certainly looks like it's the case, as the Coyotes minor league affiliate, the Tucson Roadrunners, look like they could be playing games there come next season. But let's talk to a man, some boots on the ground, who's been up front, the number one reporter on this the entire time. One of our favorite people to talk to here on Arizona's Family, Craig Morgan from PHNX, who was at Cardinals this morning and kind of doing a little bit of both. So how has your reporting day been so far?
It's been a little busy, Mark, but I appreciate you building me up like that. So I don't know if I've ever had an introduction quite like that. So you want to keep talking, I'll just be quiet for a while here.
I'm here to be a hype man. You should hear it with Nick King. In fact, and I just told Nick King downstairs we were going to have you on the show, and he's like, I just saw him. That dude's everywhere. So, yeah, we always appreciate your perspective, and I'm here to be your hype man for sure. And I'm also sad because I know hockey has been such a passion for you. But I guess, so first of all, kind of take us through it here. Professional hockey looks like it's coming back to Mullet Arena, correct?
Yeah, on an abbreviated basis, far less than the Tucson Roadrunners had hoped. Rio Nuevo District, which manages and owns, for the time being at least, Tucson Arena, just met and approved an amended deal that will allow the Roadrunners to play 6 games at Mullet Arena in Tempe next season. The remaining 30 will be in Tucson. A lot to get to here. If you want to stop me and ask questions, let me know. But the original agreement allowed for them to play as many as 5 games. So this is one more beyond that. They've amended it. It still needs to be approved by the Tucson mayor and city council, as well as the opponents who will face the Roadrunners at Mullet Arena. But all of those approvals are expected. So they will play 6 games at Mullet Arena. But that is a far cry from what Alex Morello Jr. had hoped the Roadrunners would be doing at Mullet Arena next season.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm sad for you. I'm sad for hockey fans that don't have a team to go watch throughout the season. I guess, we got to be happy what we get here is 6 games. So I guess as a hockey fan, just someone who likes the game, does this satisfy your appetite for professional hockey here in the Valley of the Sun?
Not really. It's not NHL hockey. And listen, what I will say about the Tucson Roadrunners is this was the season we had always looked at as the one where a major influx of the Coyotes prospects would be there. So you'd get to see the future of the Coyotes, and there are going to be a bunch of really interesting players there. So on that front, if it's not too bittersweet a pill for old Coyotes fans, they can go and see some of the future. But yeah, it's not NHL hockey, Mark, and it's only 6 games. Listen, this is... We can talk if you want. We can talk for a while about all the steps that led us to this point. But in my opinion, this could have been avoided with just better ownership throughout the history of this franchise.
Oh, we can talk. I want to hear what you have to say, because we're glued to your social media for sure. So, how do we get to this point, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, you and I both know this goes way back, all the way back to Steve Ellman's decision to move the team west to Glendale in 2003. It never worked. Richard Burke, his co-owner at the time, told him it wasn't going to work, and he was right. And really, all the problems that we've seen financially and otherwise have stemmed from that. It's been a parade of ownership groups that could never make it work, and were not necessarily even interested in hockey. Some of them were interested in a real estate deal, like Steve Ellman. Some of them were interested in just profiting off of it quickly, like Ice Arizona. Nobody really cared deeply about the hockey product itself. There wasn't enough concern with that. You didn't have the kind of owner like we used to have in the city with Jerry Colangelo, who actually cared about the city and took civic pride. It's just been a parade of missteps. And of course, this Morello ownership group was probably the worst of them, Mark, because they lost in the span of 5 years. They lost the arena that they were playing in, although there was a lot of baggage with Glendale before that. They lost the vote in Tempe. They lost the team. The team is now going to Salt Lake City, and yet another miscalculation here with the Roadrunners situation. Alex Morello Jr., I mean, they were out there parading that the Roadrunners were going to be playing at Mullet Arena all of next season. They wanted to move them completely. And then they realized that there were roadblocks to that, like the contracts they had signed in Tucson, maybe some opposition from ASU, maybe the need to get the AHL Board of Governors approval. They modified it to 14 games, and then it went down to 6, and that's where we are now.
So do we know which games it will be, or how many games we'll be able to see them at Mullet Arena yet?
No, the AHL, the reason we had this drop dead deadline of May 31st for the AHL is because they need to put together their schedule. They needed to know how many games are going to be in each site so that they could start planning the schedule. So that will come, I believe, in early July is when they actually put out the schedule, and they'll float the idea of the games in Tempe past those three opponents because it will be 3-weekend series. They have to approve it. It's expected that they will approve it. If one of the teams says, we're not crazy about that, they'll just move another team in.
Wow. I mean, it doesn't bode well for the June 27th deadline either if they couldn't get this done. Is that am I reading too much into that?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know who else is going to show up for that. I've had some people, and I'm sure you get this as well. There's a lot of people that chatter in your ear, and then when it comes down to it, well, that wasn't the case.
Right.
I hear people saying, well, we don't want to be the reason that the Coyotes left Arizona, but now that they're gone already, there may be other bidders on this land. We'll see. We won't find out until the day of the auction if there are going to be other bidders. If there are, and it gets into a bidding war with the paddles, I don't know. But listen, Mark, even beyond the auction, if they win the auction, they still need a lot of support from the city of Phoenix. And I'm sure you saw what Mayor Kate Gallego's office said about tax abatements. They're not in favor of any of them, including the property tax abatement that the theme park district would afford them. It doesn't sound like they're going to get that. So they have many more hurdles to cross.
And do you think that Alex Morello made enough money on this deal of selling the team to the Salt Lake City ownership group to do that independently?
To buy the land?
Yeah, to buy the land and to build the project.
Well, listen, when I look back on the Tempe project, they had all the funding in place. And I know this is a different deal, but a lot of the pieces are the same. So I would assume that they have the financing in place. They did with Tempe. And it wasn't just the Coyotes telling us they had the financing in place. Tempe did an exhaustive, basically a background check on Alex Morello and looked at all the financing, and they were satisfied. They liked the structure of the deal. So I'm assuming the financing would be in place. What I don't know is, obviously, first of all, if they're going to win the auction, but then without all these tax abatements to help pay down the debt, can they still make a go of it? I have my questions about that.
I do. I also wondered, was the city of Phoenix going to go for having two arenas? That doesn't make as much sense to me. I don't know if they're going to say that publicly, but why would they want to compete with themselves? Have you had any sort of clarity on that question?
I don't think there's any concern really, as long as it's within city of Phoenix borders. They're still getting the revenue, right? And I don't sense significant opposition from Matt Ishbia or the Suns like existed with Robert Sarver, who was dead set against the Coyotes playing there or getting any sort of help. In fact, I think Robert Sarver, I'm not even going to hide it, I think he was hoping that they would leave, and which has happened, of course. But I don't sense that sort of opposition from Matt Ishbia, and I don't think the city of Phoenix minds so much as long as the revenue is going to them.
Well, and there is opposition from the city of Scottsdale. We saw a strongly worded statement from the mayor. How much do you think that plays into another hurdle here for the Coyotes to get a new arena built and to reactivate the team?
Well, the land's in Phoenix. So when I looked at the Scottsdale mayor's statement, I was just like, you don't have any say in this matter. What are you talking about? What is this, political grandstanding or something? I don't know what's happening here. The land is literally in Phoenix, and they already said where they're getting the water from. So it was like a non-issue. It was just bizarre grandstanding. And I noticed that he actually backpedaled a little bit on that. To me, it felt like political grandstanding in an election year.
Well, that's how politicians get their names out there. I guess that's how that's how a bill becomes a law, or that's how people know your name when they're voting for you and they're fighting for the people. As far as other roadblocks here, let's just start with is there any sort of roadmap that the Roadrunners could play at Mullet full time, say next year? I definitely don't want to take Tucson's team away from them, but I am wondering how this thing ends.
No, I don't think so. I think this is going to be this way for the 2 years of the agreement. And I should note, I tweeted this out as well. The Roadrunners offered a third year to the city of Tucson to extend this agreement beyond a year. That obviously has to go through all the approval processes. But I think what we're looking at now is probably what's going to be in play for the next 2 seasons. So the Roadrunners are staying in Tucson. And honestly, I think that's a good thing for a number of reasons. I wrote a story a while back on the impact on youth hockey if they went away. Aside from the visibility in the community, that's the only permanent ice sheet down there. So if the Roadrunners are gone, does Tucson Arena even keep ice? And then what happens to all those kids who are playing hockey if they don't have anywhere to play? They gotta drive to Gilbert or Chandler or Mesa to play. the other side of this, and this, I know this played a role in them modifying the agreement, is this is not good for players and coaches. The Roadrunners player, the AHL is all about development. They spend most of the week with practices and off-ice sessions, and then they play their games on the weekends. When you're shuttling back and forth, you're cutting into that development time. I know Utah's management team was not happy about this situation, and they voiced those concerns to the AHL. That played a role in this as well. And I think they were right to have those concerns. Like, anybody who looks at a development model will look at this plan and say, wait, this is going to hurt the players. This is not a good situation for them.
Right. And you think about why spring training, the Diamondbacks moved up to the Valley to be closer, because all the shuttling, they weren't accomplishing as much. As far as this roadblock, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's directly correlated to getting our NHL team back here, but it certainly seems like there's a pattern here of it. Stuff is not quite happening the way we thought it was going to happen, the way we wanted it to happen, the way you needed it to happen. What other roadblocks do you anticipate for June 27th here? And I mean, how just generally, how do you feel about the Phoenix Coyotes, the Arizona Coyotes returning and playing games here in the next 5 years?
I don't know what other roadblocks may crop up. As you and I both know, with the Coyotes, there will probably be half a dozen more that we didn't foresee.
Right.
That has been the history of this franchise. But in terms of, I know people are hoping, a lot of people out there think that Alex Morello is the best hope for an immediate return. And that's probably true in the strictest sense of the word. But when you consider all of these missteps, all of these mistakes, here's another one that we're talking about today with the Roadrunners. How much faith do you have in the guy actually getting it done? So if I'm looking down the road and guessing for what's going to happen, and I don't like doing this because it's way too much speculation, but they don't have a good track record. So if I think if NHL hockey is coming back here, Mark, I doubt it's happening within the next 5 years. I think it's going to take longer, and it's probably going to require a different ownership group.
And it makes me sad because you look at the Tempe situation. I still don't understand why the Tempe situation didn't happen. As you've been able to dig in that more, as you've been able to look at what exactly happened there, and tell the story one day. What's the story about why the Coyotes are not building an arena in Tempe right now?
Well, I would say it was two critical things. One was a lot of misinformation by the No campaign. They had a very adept campaign that was, no money for billionaires, no tax breaks for billionaires. It's easy to paint billionaires in a negative light. Alex Morello certainly didn't help himself in that regard with his business relationships, but that's what they were saying. And there were some outright lies that were being told about that situation. I mean, look at the dump site, Mark. It was being described as a beloved compost yard.
Oh my
Maybe that's what the top layer is, but like, we had Hugh Hallman, the former mayor of Tempe, saying you should see what's underneath. It's like car parts and stuff that's eventually going to leak into the water table. So You might want to do something about that, Tempe. But that was one half of it. The other side of it, I would say, was they simply didn't spend enough money on the campaign to get it done. They needed to, we talked to Alex Morello at the news conference, and somebody said, how come you didn't spend more? He said, well, we spent $7 million, yet public records show they spent $1.1 million. So to explain the disparity there, I had a lot of people on the inside telling me that they just went cheap. They had their own staff going door to door instead of getting professionals who knew how to message, knew how to get the word out, and knew how to persuade voters to vote for them. So those were the two, I think, key pieces of that failed vote.
Is there any chance that the Tempe thing could be a candidate to house the Coyotes down the line? Could that ever come back if the June 27th land deal doesn't happen?
Never say never, but my understanding, and I've asked this question of Tempe officials, is that there's nothing like that on the table. It's not even being talked about. So it would have to start from scratch.
You love hockey. When would you hope that an NHL franchise is back here? Like, I mean, I feel like I could be an old man. I mean, some would say I already am, but could be an old man by the time this happens. What's your level of optimism, or where's your NHL meter if you had to gauge it right now that it would come back?
I don't have faith that it's going to happen in this 5-year window, seeing all the missteps by Alex Morello. So when you bring a new group in, you have the same issues. You need an arena, first of all. You need the funding. Do you need tax breaks? Yeah, of course you need tax breaks. The great untold story out there is No owner can afford his own stadium unless he's maybe Jerry Jones. They can't afford to build their own arena or stadium anymore because they're so expensive. So you need help from cities, and there is very little appetite in Arizona to help out wealthy sports owners. So that's a major hurdle to cross. They have to get the arena built. And there are all the other processes that the expansion process entails. There are other cities that are interested. Atlanta's already building an arena. Houston probably wants an arena. There are other places that want arena or want teams. Sorry. So with all that in mind, when you look at the history of franchises that have left and then the city got a team back, the fastest return ever was Minnesota, which was 7 years. And that's, as we call it in the business, the state of hockey. That's hockey is king in Minnesota, and it took them 7 years to get a franchise back. Do I see the Coyotes coming back faster than that? I have a really hard time believing they'll be back before then.
Man, what about Glendale? Could Glendale ever happen again?
I suppose with a new ownership group that knew how to build relationships instead of destroy them, they could possibly get that done. But that's what it's going to take. Like when I look at what's required to make all of this happen that we're talking about, including tax breaks, how do you get government officials on board? You need that person that understands the community. You need the Jerry Colangelo type who builds coalition, builds relationships. Maybe you have, dare I throw it out there, Shane Doan as your front man for whatever that ownership group is, and then you try and sell it to everybody else. I think that's the sort of thing that would help a return of the NHL.
Yeah, no, that would be, I think that would have to be the move to get it back here for sure. And if I had $1 billion, he'd be my first hire. And then you might be my first, he'd be my second. I am happy for Tucson, though, because, the Valley had its team yanked away. You certainly don't want to yank another community's team away. And, I mean, I feel like Tucson's almost an extension of the Valley here. At least they are in Arizona's family with our viewership. But I guess the fan base down there, how would you describe it? And what do you feel like is their current emotion of being able to keep most of the games down there?
Well, like the Coyotes community on a scale, in the AHL, the Roadrunners community is a small community, but it's a passionate community, and their attendance has been rising year by year. I think they average just over 4,100 fans. So it's by no means one of the leading AHL franchises in attendance, but they are growing. They've had some success down there. And like you said, I think it means a lot to those fans. It means a lot to the youth hockey community that they have that team down there. I know they wanted to stay down there. That was the prevailing sentiment internally. They wanted to stay down there. So I'm happy for the team, the coaches, the staff, and I'm happy for the fans down there.
And do you feel like watching the Roadrunners at Mullet Arena will be how would you kind of describe what you feel like the experience is going to be there to have the team play it up there the next 2 years for 6 games?
I really don't know. I don't know, Mark. It's not going to be NHL hockey, okay? So if they're expecting to replicate that feel that Mullet had for NHL games, it's not going to be there. It's a minor league sport, okay? Flip side, there are a lot of really interesting prospects, some really good players that are going to be there, and the simple name Roadrunners clearly has a brand here in Phoenix. That's how hockey started in Phoenix with the Roadrunners way back when. So maybe there'll be a little bit of fascination, and maybe 6 games is the right amount to just make it enough of a sort of an event, an oddity where people will want to turn out and see it.
This is I kind of think this is going to happen. The Coyotes are the Utah. They should be the Utah Patrol, by the way. I told someone in the organization that today. That's the name I'm submitting. The Patrol, like the ski patrol. But they're going to get really good right as they leave, right? Are they pretty primed here to be a playoff team next year?
I'm not sure about next year, but they're not far off, Mark. And that may be the most painful part of this, because I've been covering this franchise for so long, and I watched all sorts of missteps from the management side where, okay, we're starting to rebuild. Oh, let's abandon it halfway through because we think we're good enough. No, you're not good enough. Don't do it. Okay, we're going to go get Phil Kessel and Taylor Hall, and we're not going to do anything. And then we're going to have to start the rebuild all over again. There have been so many mistakes on that front and so much bad drafting. Bill Armstrong comes in and says, we're going to build this through the draft the right way. A pro scout or a scout by trade, spent 2 decades with the Blues as a scout, and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He acquired draft assets, some amazing trades along the way, by the way, to get guys like Dylan Gunther, who probably would have really helped the Vancouver Canucks in that last playoff run. And you can see the talent coming now. You can see it building. Even though the Coyotes haven't had any draft lottery luck, they have a lot of good prospects. They're going to get more this year. They're going to get more the following year. 3 years down the line, Mark, I think this is going to be a very good team in Utah, and it's going to be all the harder to watch because it should have been here if not for the mistakes of ownership groups.
That is so painful to hear, but such great insight. Who's closer to being a playoff team then, in your opinion? The Arizona Coyotes, now the Salt Lake City hockey team, or the Arizona Cardinals?
Oh, I'm going to go with the Cardinals on that one. I'm with my guy Johnny Venerable on this. I think the Cardinals could be a playoff team this year.
Wow.
You know, a fringe playoff team, maybe a 9-10 win team. And I don't know if they go much farther than that, but I think they could be a playoff team. I'm intrigued by this offense a bit. We'll see about the defense.
I am. I just think with all of these rookies, all these young guys, they're going to need a little time to develop. I think they might be a problem for people in 3 years. But there's just, but if you run the ball and you can play decent defense, I'm starting to agree with you.
I wonder about the defense. We'll see about the defense. I think that's the big question mark.
What was the biggest takeaway from the first OTA today for you?
The biggest takeaway?
Yeah.
It's really hot. Come on. You know this as well as I do, that when you go to OTAs, there is not much that you can clean. Guys are running around without pads, and anything that you try, if you try and take anything away from these, you're just going to be a fool, honestly, because they're not wearing pads. They're not really doing anything. It's like orientation. That's all it is. We won't know anything until camp starts. So let's hold off on any grand pronouncements. Although I guess I just made one with them being a playoff team.
Well, it's, and it's good to have you, and I'm laying it on thick here, but you are one of the best reporters in the Valley. And I mean, just the way you get things out, and it's always interesting. I know how hard you work. It's great to have you back in the Cardinal beat, because it's just a voice we certainly need. So being back covering the NFL, I know the pain of losing the NHL, but what is it like being back in the NFL locker room?
Well, we're not in the locker quite yet. I'm actually looking forward to that, because it's about building relationships, right, with players, with staff, with coaches. That's how I think you have to cover a team the right way, by doing that. And that's when you can tell good stories and really get to know what's happening with the team. So I'm a long way from that. I guess I would say that. Don't expect the level of coverage I gave on the Coyotes with the Cardinals this season. It's going to take me a while to get up to speed. And I also think, like, by looking at us side by side, by the way, I was just out at Cardinals practice all day, but I do not have the tan that you have right now, and I want to know what's going on.
I was at the pool with the kids all weekend. Yeah, I think it might be the lighting in here, because there's definitely some ginger stuff going on. I need a better filter. Okay, cool. We'll just have to have you in studio. Where can we find your stuff? Where, now that the hockey you've shifted to the NFL, where can we find you, and where can we get the latest updates on all things hockey, Arizona Cardinals, and Ruminations by Craig Morgan?
Yeah, on the website, gophnx.com, and on my Twitter handle, or I guess I have to say X now, really have to say X now, or Elon might come after me, at Craig S. Morgan. Okay,
I would pay for Elon to come after you and listen to that conversation. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on short notice. Thank you for all your time over the years on Arizona's family, and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Mark. Great talking to you.
This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.